On Saturday night, March 8th, in my mother's dining room in Savannah, Georgia, my stepfather stood up, raised his glass, and called my sister the hero who saved our home. Everyone clapped. I didn't. I reached into my purse, pulled out a folded bank statement, and placed it in the center of the table. The sound of the paper hitting polished wood was softer than the applause had been, but it was louder. The room went quiet in a way that made the chandelier hum. My name is Erin Caldwell. I'm 31 and I live in Tampa, Florida, where I work as a medical billing auditor. I don't deal in opinions, I deal in documentation. Across from me sat my younger sister, Kendra Holt, 28, glowing under the dining room light like she'd just stepped off a magazine page. To her right was my mother, Dana Caldwell, twisting her napkin into a tight spiral. At the head of the table stood Bruce Caldwell, my stepfather of 20 years, still holding his glass mid-air. I just think it's important we recognize who stepped up when we needed it most, Bruce had said moments earlier. If it weren't for Kendra, we might have lost this house. Lost the house? Those words don't float lightly for people our age. Not in Georgia. Not after property taxes jump and insurance premiums spike, and retirement doesn't stretch the way it used to. Kendra gave a modest smile, the kind she uses in her Instagram photos. Chin-dipped eyes soft. I just did what family does, she said. Family. I had driven 4 hours that morning from Tampa for my mom and Bruce's 25th anniversary dinner. The house looked good. Fresh mulch in the yard, new outdoor lanterns by the garage. Inside, the dining room table was set with my mother's wedding china, the one she only brings out for something important. Apparently, this was important. Bruce finally lowered his glass and looked at me. Erin, you've been quiet tonight. I felt every eye at the table shift. Quiet doesn't mean absent. It doesn't mean uninvolved. It doesn't mean I haven't been watching the numbers. I just want to make sure we're thanking the right person, I said calmly. I turned the bank statement so the columns faced Bruce. Transfers highlighted in yellow. Dates circled in blue ink. Every month, same amount, same memo line. Mortgage mom. The only sound in the room was the ticking of the wall clock above the china cabinet. Bruce's jaw tightened. Kendra's smile didn't disappear, but it stiffened. My mother stopped twisting her napkin. No one reached for the paper. No one said thank you. And that was the moment I understood this wasn't about gratitude. It was about a story they had already decided to believe. But stories don't override numbers. And if I was going to sit at this table and be erased, I wasn't going to do it quietly. Because if Kendra was the hero who saved everything, then what exactly had my money been saving? 18 months earlier, on a Tuesday afternoon in September, my mother called me while I was reviewing a stack of hospital reimbursement claims in my Tampa office. She didn't cry. Dana Caldwell has never been the crying type, but her voice carried that thin, stretched tone people use when they're trying to hold a roof up with bare hands. Bruce doesn't want you to worry, she said. It's just temporary. Property taxes went up. Insurance, too. We're adjusting. Adjusting. That word lands differently when you're in your 60s, and the house is the only thing fully paid toward your future. Bruce had retired the year before. Not dramatically. No gold watch ceremony. Just a quiet exit after decades in municipal maintenance. The pension was steady, but smaller than expected. Then the county reassessed property values. Then the homeowner's insurance premium jumped after hurricane season. Then the water heater failed. None of it catastrophic on its own. Together, it was erosion. I can help, I said. You already do enough, she replied quickly, the reflex of a proud Southern mother. At that point, I was 30, living in a modest apartment outside downtown Tampa, working full-time as a medical billing auditor. My job revolves around one principle: money leaves a trail. Every claim, every adjustment, every discrepancy, it's all documented somewhere. I asked her for numbers. She hesitated before giving them to me. The mortgage wasn't in danger yet, but there was a gap, several $100s each month, once taxes and insurance recalculated. They were dipping into savings. Bruce didn't like talking about it. He especially didn't like the idea of help from me. "He thinks it'll pass," Mom said softly. I knew better. Inflation doesn't pass politely. That evening after work, I opened my laptop at my kitchen table. I logged into my bank account. I calculated what I could realistically commit without derailing my own retirement contributions. I set up an automatic monthly transfer to their joint checking account. Same date, every month, same amount. Clear memo line. Mortgage. Mom. No fanfare. No announcement to extended family. No group texts. I didn't need a parade. I needed predictability. Over the next year and a half, that auto draft became as routine as my car payment. I kept digital copies of every confirmation email in a secure cloud folder. Not because I expected trouble, but because documentation is muscle memory for me. Mom would call sometimes after the transfer cleared. "Thank you, honey," she'd say, voice low. "We're managing. Meanwhile, Kendra was building something she called a lifestyle consulting brand. She moved back to Savannah around the same time Bruce retired. She posted about productivity planners and curated spaces and financial freedom mindset. Bruce liked those posts. He'd share them occasionally. I never commented. Family dynamics don't shift all at once. They tilt gradually. Praise drifts in one direction. Silence gathers in another. I told myself it didn't matter who got the credit as long as the house stayed secure. Because for people my parents' age, the house isn't just a building. It's the last piece of stability they can count on. And I was willing to be invisible if that meant keeping it that way. What I didn't realize then was that silence can create its own version of truth. And sometimes, the quiet person at the table becomes the easiest one to rewrite. By the time dessert was served on Saturday night, the word hero had been repeated 4 times. Not jokingly, not casually, formally. Bruce said it once in his toast. Aunt Lorraine, my mother's older sister, who drove in from Hilton Head for the anniversary dinner, said it again while slicing pecan pie. Even Mom used it softly, like she was testing how it sounded out loud. "Kendra really carried us through," she said, eyes lowered to her plate. "Carried us." I watched my sister absorb the praise. The way some people absorb stage lighting, subtly adjusting posture, chin lifted just enough to reflect it back. Kendra has always understood optics. She moved back to Savannah around the time Bruce retired, telling everyone she wanted to be present for family. On social media, she posted photos of organized kitchen drawers, budget planners, captions about building financial security from the inside out. She talked about discipline, about stepping up. Bruce shared those posts sometimes. I noticed. At the table, he leaned back in his chair, fork in hand. "Most kids your age wouldn't sacrifice like that," he told her. "It says something about character." I kept my hands folded in my lap. There's a difference between reacting and observing. My job has trained me to wait for patterns. Kendra's been handling the mortgage payments directly, Bruce continued. I don't even have to think about it anymore. Directly. That word caught. Because automatic transfers don't require thinking. They require routing numbers. I looked at Kendra. "Which lender are you using now?" I asked lightly, as if I were making conversation. She didn't hesitate at first. The same one, she said. "What's the name again?" I asked, reaching for my water glass. A pause. "You know, the regular one." Bruce waved his fork. "The bank in town. They've always handled it. We don't have a local bank handling the mortgage. I set up the auto draft 18 months ago through the national servicer listed on their original loan documents. It doesn't route through a neighborhood branch." I didn't say that. Instead, I nodded slowly. "Right. And it drafts on the 1st or the 15th. Kendra shifted in her chair. "It depends on what?" But I didn't press, because pressing too early makes you look defensive. And I wasn't defensive. I was taking inventory. Aunt Lorraine changed the subject to wedding plans. Kendra had been hinting at online. Bruce laughed, poured more coffee, told her she deserved something beautiful after all she's done. All she's done. Mom reached for my hand, briefly under the table. It was a small squeeze. Gratitude warning. I couldn't tell. I glanced toward the hallway, where the mail slot sits in the front door. Earlier that afternoon, I'd noticed a white envelope on the console table beneath it. Windowed. Standard mortgage statement size. Unopened. That was the first real clue. Not proof, not accusation. Just wait. If Kendra had been handling everything, why was a statement sitting there, waiting? I felt something settle inside me. Not anger, not yet. Just alignment. Stories can stretch. Paper doesn't. And tomorrow, when the dishes are cleared and the guests are gone, there will still be numbers. The only question is whether they tell the same story this table does. The applause faded, but the tension didn't. Saturday night had settled into that heavy stillness that follows a toast no one quite agrees with. The pecan pie sat half-sliced. Coffee cooled in porcelain cups. My bank statement remained in the center of the table, a quiet rectangle of white against polished wood. Bruce didn't touch it at first. Kendra didn't look at it at all. "I don't understand what this is supposed to prove," Bruce finally said, not angry, yet just irritated. "You helped. That's fine. But Kendra's been the one managing everything." Managing. The word felt broader now, less specific, safer. "I'm not trying to prove anything," I said evenly. "I just want clarity." I slid the paper a few inches closer to him. Yellow highlights marked each monthly transfer. Same date, same amount, 18 consecutive months. The memo line printed clearly beside each entry. Mortgage. Mom. Bruce adjusted his glasses and leaned in. He read the first 2 lines, then the next. His jaw flexed slightly. "That's generous," Aunt Lorraine murmured from her seat, as if we were discussing a charitable donation. "It's temporary support," Kendra said quickly. "When I moved back, I took over the actual bills. Aaron just helped cover gaps." Gaps. I folded my hands together. "Which bills, specifically?" Kendra gave a small, patient smile. "The mortgage, utilities, insurance. You know, the main ones." "The mortgage drafts on the 1st, I said, gently. "Right," she blinked. "It depends," she repeated from earlier. "On what?" The question hung there, not sharp, not accusatory, just waiting. Bruce shifted in his chair. "Why are we turning this into an audit?" he asked. "Tonight is about celebration." "Celebration," I nodded once. "Of course." From the hallway, the faint tick of the wall clock grew louder in the silence. My eyes drifted briefly toward the unopened envelope on the console table by the front door, the one I'd noticed earlier that afternoon. Windowed, standard mortgage statement size, still sealed. If everything was being handled, why hadn't it been opened? Dana cleared her throat. "We don't need to go through paperwork at the table," she said softly. It's handled. Handled. The word echoed in 3 different voices now. Kendra reached for her coffee, but her hand wasn't as steady as before. Erin works with numbers, she said lightly. She sees problems everywhere. I almost smiled at that. I don't see problems everywhere. I see patterns. In the insurance premium increase, I asked carefully. Did that get adjusted last quarter? Bruce looked up. What increase? Kendra answered quickly. I took care of it. How much was the adjustment? A pause. I don't remember the exact number, she said. The chandelier hummed faintly overhead. I wasn't accusing. I wasn't escalating. I was narrowing. Because if there had been an adjustment, and there had, then the mortgage draft should have changed by a specific amount. My transfers had not. I felt something shift in the room. Not anger, not yet. Pressure. The kind that builds quietly inside a pipe before anyone hears it strain. Bruce straightened in his chair. We're fine, he said firmly, as if saying it could seal the truth in place. The house is secure. Secure. I nodded slowly. I hoped he was right. But if the house was secure, why did the numbers in my account tell a slightly different story? And why was that envelope still unopened by the door? Sunday morning, March 9th, the house was quiet. In that way, only other people's homes can be. Soft footsteps, a low television somewhere, the smell of reheated coffee drifting from the kitchen. I stood at the console table, by the front door, and picked up the unopened envelope I'd seen the night before. It wasn't addressed to Kendra. It was addressed to Bruce Caldwell. Mortgage servicing statement. The paper felt heavier than it should have. I didn't open it. Not yet. Opening it would turn suspicion into action. And action would have consequences no one could take back. Instead, I slid it back exactly where it had been and walked to the guest room with my purse. Inside, I set my purse on the bed and unzipped the side pocket where I keep things I don't want to lose: my car keys, a spare phone charger, and the cloud drive printout I'd brought, because something in me had already known I might need it. I pulled out my phone and logged in. No banks were open. It was Sunday. But accounts don't sleep, and neither do transactions. I opened the joint checking account, the one Mom and Bruce had set up when the shortfall started, the one my automatic transfer fed every month like clockwork. Deposit history first. My eyes moved down the list, the way they do at work, scanning for a name, a source, a pattern that doesn't belong. There it was, again and again, my deposit. My deposit. My deposit. Scarlet red flag. No, just plain truth in black text. And then I looked for Kendra. Nothing. No incoming transfers. No ACH deposits under her name. No payroll. No Venmo cash-ins that would match a monthly mortgage amount. No cash deposits that would make sense for someone handling everything. I sat down on the edge of the bed, the air in my chest thinning. Still, I didn't want to label it. Not yet. So I did what I always do when I need to be fair. I checked the withdrawals. The page loaded and the pattern changed. The outgoing transactions weren't all bills. There were utilities, yes. There was a grocery store charge. But threaded between them were entries that didn't belong in a keep the house, a float budget. A series of app-based transfers to something labeled K. Holt Studio, small at first, then larger. A few payments to a rent-to-own furniture company I didn't recognize. 2 cash withdrawals within 3 days, both in round numbers that suggested convenience, not necessity. And then one line I couldn't ignore, a payment to an online marketing platform monthly subscription, dated 3 days after one of Kendra's posts about launching something big. I stared at the screen until my eyes hurt. It wasn't proof of theft. It was proof of direction. Money in, money out, just not where the story at the dinner table said it was going. The moral break came quietly, not like a slam of a door. I realized I had been protecting the wrong thing. I'd been protecting the peace, assuming the peace protected my mother. But peace, built on silence, isn't peace. It's permission. Down the hall, I heard my mother's voice in the kitchen light, and cheerful, like last night had never happened. I heard Kendra laugh. I heard Bruce clear his throat. The sound made my stomach tighten. Because if they could laugh while an unopened mortgage statement sat by the door, then the problem wasn't just credit. It was control. I took a screenshot of the withdrawals page, then another, then one more capturing the date range in the corner. Not to weaponize it, to anchor it. I slid my phone back into my purse and sat still for a moment, listening to the house breathe. I wasn't ready to confront anyone, not yet. But I was done being rewritten. And now that I'd seen where the money was going, I knew exactly what my next question had to be. By Sunday afternoon, March 9th, the house no longer felt like a celebration site. It felt like a waiting room. Aunt Lorraine had left after lunch. The dishes were stacked. The anniversary balloons sagged slightly in the corner of the dining room. Bruce sat in his recliner, watching muted golf, not really watching. Kendra was at the kitchen island, scrolling on her phone. I stood in the doorway between the living room and kitchen and made a decision I knew would change the tone of the day. "Bruce," I said evenly, "can we log into the mortgage account?" The remote froze in his hand. "We don't need to do that," Kendra answered before he could. "It's handled." Handled. I walked toward the coffee table and set my purse down. "If it's handled, then it'll take 2 minutes to confirm." Bruce exhaled slowly. "Why are we digging at this, Aaron?" "Because there's an escrow adjustment," I said. "And I don't see it reflected in the transfer amount." "That landed." Bruce turned his head. "What adjustment?" Kendra's shoulders tightened, almost imperceptibly. "It was minor." "How minor?" I asked, still calm. Mom stepped in from the hallway, drying her hands with a dish towel. "Aaron, honey, it's Sunday." "I know," I said gently. "We don't need to call anyone. Just log in." Silence stretched. Finally, Bruce stood and walked to the small desk tucked against the wall near the kitchen. The old desktop computer hummed to life. He typed slowly, hunting for the password written somewhere in a spiral notebook he keeps in the drawer. Kendra hovered behind him. When the mortgage portal loaded, Bruce leaned closer to the screen. I stayed back, giving him space to read it first. He frowned. "What's that mean?" he muttered. I stepped forward. There it was. Escrow shortage notice. Past due. Balance $1,842. Not catastrophic. Not foreclosure. But not secure. Bruce blinked at the numbers like they might rearrange themselves if he stared long enough. "That can't be right. It says the last full payment posted was January," I said quietly. "It drafts automatically," Kendra insisted. "It's probably just processing." "It's March," I replied. The room shifted. Mom moved closer to Bruce, peering at the screen. "There must be a mistake," she whispered. "There could be," I said, "but mistakes leave timestamps." Bruce clicked into the payment history tab. The page refreshed. 2 partial payments, 1 return transaction. A late fee applied 3 weeks ago. Kendra's voice sharpened. "The bank system has been glitchy." "I told you that." Bruce turned slowly toward her. "You said it was taken care of." "It is," she snapped. "You're overreacting." No one was overreacting. That was the problem. For 18 months, I had been feeding money into a system I assumed was stabilizing this house. Instead, something had been shifting under the surface. Bruce straightened, color draining slightly from his face. If we're past due, why didn't we get a call? Mom hesitated. My eyes moved toward the front door. The statement, I said softly. The one on the console. Kendra stepped in front of Bruce. This is ridiculous. You're turning a minor delay into a crisis. It becomes a crisis when no one looks at it, I answered. Bruce walked past her toward the hallway. The unopened envelope was no longer just paper. It was proof of whether this house was secure or quietly sliding. And once it was opened, there would be no going back to applause and toasts. Bruce opened the envelope at 2:17 p.m. on Sunday. The paper made a dry, tearing sound that seemed louder than it should have. Dana stood beside him. I stood a few steps back. Kendra remained near the kitchen island, arms crossed now instead of scrolling. Bruce unfolded the statement slowly. He read the first paragraph, then the second. His breathing changed. "What's a delinquency notice?" he asked, not looking at anyone. Dana pressed her hand to her chest. "That can't be right." I stepped closer, careful not to crowd him. The letter confirmed what the portal had shown: escrow, shortage partial payments, late fee assessed account, flagged for review, if balance not corrected within 30 days. 30 days. Kendra scoffed lightly. It's automated language. They send those all the time. Bruce didn't respond. Then his phone buzzed in his hand. He glanced at the screen, frowning. What now? He read silently, then aloud. Fraud alert. Unusual activity detected on your Discover card. Please confirm recent transactions. The room shifted. You don't have a Discover card, I said quietly. Bruce looked up. I don't. Kendra moved quickly. That's probably junk. Scam text. Delete it. It's from the bank's official number, Bruce said. Dana's face drained of color. Bruce tapped the message. A link opened to a secure login page. He hesitated, then handed the phone to me. Is this real? I scanned the URL. Legitimate. Log in, I said. Kendra stepped forward. This is getting ridiculous. You're spiraling. Bruce ignored her. He entered his information slowly. The page loaded. Credit account ending in 4821. Balance $6,742. Available credit $258. Bruce stared at the screen as if it had betrayed him personally. I don't have this card, he said again, softer this time. Dana sat down heavily at the kitchen table. Kendra's voice rose. Mom said it was fine. It was temporary. We needed to float something for the business. The word business landed like a dropped plate. What business? Bruce asked. My consulting launch, Kendra snapped. You said you believed in me. I believed in you, he said. Not this. I stepped in before the argument could derail. Bruce, we need to pull your full credit report, I said. Now. It's Sunday, Dana whispered. That doesn't matter, I replied. Credit monitoring is online. Kendra's composure cracked. You're acting like I committed a crime. I didn't answer that, because the truth was forming faster than anyone could stop it. Bruce's hand trembled slightly as he navigated to the credit bureau site. Another account appeared. A personal line of credit. Opened 8 months ago. Balance $3,900. He turned slowly toward Dana. You knew about this. She covered her face. It was just until the launch paid off, she said through her fingers. Kendra said she'd reimburse everything. The house didn't feel like a waiting room anymore. It felt like a structure with hairline cracks suddenly visible in daylight. Kendra's eyes locked onto mine. This is what you wanted, she said. To make me look like a failure. No, I said quietly. I wanted transparency. Bruce sank into the dining chair. The stakes had shifted. This wasn't about who got credit at a toast. It was about whether this house and the people inside it were financially exposed. And if I kept pushing, I risked more than family tension. I risked forcing a truth no one here was prepared to survive. But silence had already cost us. And now the numbers were speaking out loud. By late Sunday afternoon, March 9th, the house had gone quiet again, but not peacefully. Bruce sat at the dining table staring at the printed credit summary like it might blink first. Dana remained in the kitchen chair, tissue in hand. Kendra had retreated to the hallway, phone pressed to her ear in a hushed, urgent tone. I stood by the desk with the desktop monitor still glowing. Chaos had arrived. Now it needed structure. "Bruce," I said gently, "we need to look at the timeline." He didn't argue this time. I opened my cloud folder and pulled up the transfer history I'd printed the night before. I laid it flat on the table beside the mortgage statement and the credit summary. 3 documents, 3 angles of the same story. Deposit, withdrawal, credit line. Patterns don't lie. For 18 months, I said calmly, my transfer hit on the first, every time. Bruce nodded faintly. "Now, look at the withdrawals from the joint account," I continued. "The ones labeled K. Holt Studio." Dana inhaled sharply. Bruce leaned closer. The amounts started small. 200, 300, then 600, 800, always within days of my deposit clearing. And the escrow shortage notice, I added. The balance started slipping about the same time the withdrawals increased. Bruce's hand tightened around the edge of the paper. "This doesn't mean she intended harm," Dana said quickly, as if intent could erase math. "I'm not assigning motive," I replied evenly. "I'm identifying flow." That was the shift. No more arguing about feelings. No more defending character. Just numbers. Kendra re-entered the room abruptly. I talked to someone, she announced. The credit account was for business expenses. Mom agreed to it. Bruce turned slowly. "Did you tell me?" "It would have stressed you out," she snapped. The room tightened again. I adjusted my approach. "If this was for business," I said carefully, "then there should be revenue." Silence. "Where are the deposits from the business?" I asked. Kendra's jaw flexed. "It's pre-revenue." "For 18 months, Bruce asked. She didn't answer. I turned back to the screen and pulled up the payment history from the marketing platform I'd noticed earlier. Monthly subscription. Automatic charge. Launch costs, Kendra muttered. "Then, we need to see the business account," I said. "No," she shot back instantly. That was the clue. Not the charges. Not the credit. The refusal. Bruce's eyes moved from her to me. The stakes were no longer hypothetical. "If we don't stabilize this," I said quietly, "the escrow shortage grows. Late fees compound. Credit scores drop. That's not emotional. That's arithmetic." Dana began to cry softly. Kendra folded her arms tighter. "So what you're going to take over?" I didn't answer immediately. Because that was the strategic pivot forming in my head. Not exposure, control. If money was the vulnerability, then structure was the remedy. "I'm going back to Tampa tomorrow," I said evenly. "But before I do, we need to freeze access to this account." Bruce looked startled. "Freeze?" "Temporarily," I clarified, "until we reconcile the numbers." Kendra's face flushed. "You can't just do that." "I can, if my name is funding it," I replied. Silence filled the space between us. For the first time all weekend, I felt the balance shift slightly, back toward center. The numbers weren't shouting anymore. They were lining up. And once patterns line up, they're very hard to ignore. Monday morning, March 10th, the sun rose on Savannah like it didn't know what it was shining on. The house was quiet again, but the silence had changed. It wasn't the polite, strained silence of a family pretending. It was the silence of people forced to live with numbers. I sat at the kitchen table with my laptop open, coffee untouched. Bruce sat across from me in the same chair he'd used for the anniversary dinner, only now his shoulders looked heavier. Dana hovered near the sink, wiping the same clean spot on the counter over and over. Kendra lingered in the hallway, close enough to hear far enough to deny involvement. No banks were open yet. It was early, but this wasn't about walking into a branch. It was about stopping the bleeding. First, I said, keeping my voice level, we freeze access. Bruce stared at me. How? Not the account. I clarified. The risk. I pulled up the credit bureau site again. Bruce watched my screen, jaw tight. I walked him through a credit freeze, step by step, confirming his identity, setting a PIN, printing the confirmation page. A small action, a massive consequence. Kendra's voice rose from the hallway. You're treating me like a criminal. I didn't turn around. I'm treating the situation like it's urgent. Dana made a sound like she wanted to protest, but no words came out. I moved to the next bureau. Then the next. 3 freezes, 3 confirmations, 3 doors closing. Bruce exhaled like someone who'd been holding his breath underwater. Now we change passwords, I said. We logged into the mortgage portal. Bruce's hands shook as he typed. I made him update the password, enable 2-factor authentication, and set alerts for any missed payment or escrow change. Then the joint checking account. Bruce hesitated. Dana usually handles that. Dana flinched. Dana can still see it, I said gently. But no one moves money without both of you knowing. Kendra stepped into the kitchen, face flushed. So you're locking me out? Yes, Bruce said, and the word came out rough. Kendra stared at him stunned. He'd spent all weekend defending her story. Now he was drawing a line. But I was trying to, she began. Trying doesn't pay escrow. Bruce cut in. Trying doesn't fix my credit. The karma wasn't dramatic. It was administrative. It was the kind of consequence adults fear because it's permanent and boring and real. Kendra's hero narrative didn't shatter with a scream. It collapsed under a printer's ink and confirmation numbers. Still the stakes climbed, because the next step wasn't as clean. I pulled up the mortgage statement again. We need to bring the account current, I said. There's a past due balance and escrow shortage. Bruce rubbed his forehead. How much? Right now, I said it's manageable. But if we miss the next deadline fees stack and the account stays flagged. Dana finally spoke. We don't have that kind of money sitting around. Kendra's eyes flicked to her phone, as if the screen could conjure it. Bruce looked at me, then really looked. Not with pride, not with judgment, with fear. Aaron, he said quietly, are you going to stop your transfers? The question landed like a weight, because my money had been the foundation they'd built lies on. And if I kept paying without control, nothing would change. But if I stopped paying, the house could slide further. That was the edge of the cliff. And the only way forward was structure strong enough to hold all of us, whether Kendra liked it or not. Monday, March 10th, 3:40 p.m. By the time the bank branches closed for the day, the structure was in place. Bruce and I had spent the afternoon on speakerphone with the mortgage servicer. After verifying his identity and confirming the escrow shortage, we arranged a reinstatement plan, partial payment, immediately remainder, spread across the next 6 months. Not ideal, but stable. No foreclosure track, no automatic escalation, contained. The Discover card was reported as unauthorized. The fraud department opened a case number. The personal line of credit was flagged for review pending documentation. That process would take weeks, maybe longer, but the machinery had started turning. And once institutions move, they rarely reverse without consequence. Kendra sat at the edge of the living room couch, arms wrapped around herself. She had stopped arguing by noon. The shift wasn't dramatic. It was quiet. Dana looked older than she had 2 days ago. Bruce signed the final authorization form to restrict access on the joint account, then slid the pen across the table toward me. "Is that it?" he asked. "It's a beginning," I said. He nodded slowly. Kendra's voice came out smaller than I'd ever heard it. "So what happens to me?" The question wasn't defiant anymore. It was real. Bruce looked at her for a long time. "You get a job," he said finally. "A real one. And you pay back what you took." Dana inhaled sharply, but didn't object. No yelling, no dramatic eviction, no spectacle, just terms. Kendra's eyes flicked toward me, searching for something, approval maybe, or accusation. I gave her neither. This wasn't about humiliation. It was about boundaries. By 5:15 p.m., the documents were filed, passwords changed, alerts, activated credit frozen, and payments scheduled. The house was financially exposed less than 12 hours ago. Now it was guarded, not because I'd exposed anyone, because I'd structured everything. Bruce walked me to the front door as the late afternoon light stretched long across the porch. "I was wrong," he said quietly. "About you. About her." I didn't rush to fill the silence. I don't need to be the hero, I told him. I just need the truth to stand. He nodded, eyes wet, but steady. Inside, I could hear Dana and Kendra talking low voices, uncertain but not hostile. Healing doesn't start with forgiveness. It starts with accountability. As I drove back toward Tampa that evening, the skyline rising in the distance, I realized something I hadn't expected. I wasn't angry anymore. Not because everything was fixed, but because control had returned. Not control over them. Control over my participation. My transfers would continue, but only through structured oversight. No open access. No blind trust. Clear boundaries, documented systems, shared visibility. If Kendra rebuilt her life, it would be on solid ground. If she didn't, the structure would hold without collapsing the rest of us. Justice, I'd learned, isn't loud. It's documented. It's enforceable. And it leaves space for healing without pretending nothing happened. The bank statement that started this wasn't proof of betrayal. It was proof of pattern. And patterns once named can be changed. If you've ever had to choose between protecting your peace and protecting your family, I'd love to hear how you navigated it. Share your thoughts below. If this story resonated, consider liking and following for more real stories about justice and healing. And if you're ready, there's another story waiting for you next.